I'm doing this video series because there is a 19.1 version of Apex now. I have a complete video series for Oracle Apex 18.1, and the current series will use Apex 19.1 and will follow in parallel with the same steps in the 18.1 series. So I have for software this time XE 11.2, Apex 19.1, SQL Developer 19.1. I will not walk through the steps of installing XE and upgrading to Apex 19.1. You can look at the previous video series and this particular video, Apex 00 of 30, if you want a demonstration of how to install XE and upgrade Apex. The steps of going from Apex 18.1 to 19.1 are the same. So if you want to work along, you can download and install Oracle XE 11.2, or you can use the most current version, which I do not have installed. You can download Oracle Apex 19.1 and go through the steps of upgrading to that. The one other thing that I have is I have also installed a translated version of Apex for Spanish. So if you're interested in that, you can go to the documentation. It's pretty simple to follow and pretty easy to do. But it's not quite as simple as I've seen on a few posts online. It's not just a matter of selecting a different language. You do have to install a set of support files, images, and other things that will provide the translated version of Apex. Once you've done that, then when you log in and go to, in my case, the local install of Oracle Apex, I can pick between Spanish and English. So if I look at my version of the database, as I told you, if I run this, then I can see that I do have 11.2 installed. I can go to SQL Developer Help About and see that I'm working with version 19.1. So let's get started. In this video, we are going to look at the data model by importing the data dictionary using SQL Developer, and I'll show you how you can include or exclude the lookup tables. The reason we're going to look at the data model is we want to make some decisions about what forms we need in our Apex web application. There are situations where a single table would have a simple form on that table. There are other situations where two tables go hand in hand, and one is considered the master and the other is considered the detail, or the main form and the subform. So we'll take a look at the data model and talk about how we decide when to create a simple form or when to do a master detail or main form subform. And this has to do with what you could describe the table as independent or dependent. Sometimes the data in a table is dependent on the existence of data in other tables. So we'll also briefly mention one-to-many and one-to-one. These describe what would be master versus detail or main form versus subform. We'll create a simple form for people and or I guess that's actually persons, and a master detail for persons and employees. So I'm going to switch to SQL Developer. So I have both English and Spanish, and I will launch the English version. I am logged in to the Animal Shelter 191 schema. If I expand on the left-hand side, I see those tables. What I want to do is come up to File, Data Modeler, Import, and I want to import the data dictionary. Then I select the account or schema I'm going to connect to and select that again. And then these are my choices. To start off with, I'm going to select everything, including my lookup tables. And I'll click Next, and I will finish. So I have the tables in the animal shelter database, and I have it 1, 2, 3, 4 lookup tables. The lookup tables we have created provide a list of values, a list of options for data entry. You'll have many lookup tables, but often when you look at the data model, you don't want to include those. They're used for data entry consistency, but we may not want to see them when we're looking at the data model itself. So I'm going to come back through and do the data modeler import data dictionary. Select my animal shelter 191, and I'm going to unselect the lookups. So I'll get a more succinct view of the data dictionary or the data model, the core database for this application. And when I click Finish, since I've already done an import, I get this screen. I want to expand the tables, and I want to drop the lookups that were displayed in the initial import. So I'm not affecting the database, I'm affecting this image that I get when I import the data model. So I'll merge those changes, and then I will pause the video and rearrange these so I can zoom in and get a closer view of these tables. So we see the animals table, transactions, employees, persons, zips, which really serves as a lookup, but I didn't exclude it, so it's still in the data model, and activities. So think about the independence or dependence of the data in the tables. It is possible to have an animal with many of these data items known and completed without having it associated with another table. The animal exists independent of a transaction or an activity, or it can. The same thing would apply to persons. You have people with first names, last names. Having that data isn't actually dependent on them having a transaction or them having an employee record or them having any activities associated with them. So persons and animals might be considered as candidates for simple forms. Keep in mind, though, that just because you create a simple form on a table doesn't mean you can't do another form as a master detail where you use that table again. There may be different angles or perspectives in which you want to create forms for the data entry or just data display. Dependent tables, though, are things like transactions. You will not have a transaction without having an associated related animal record. You will not have a transaction without having a related person's record, which is an employee. You will not have an activity such as a medical exam or grooming or training without having the associated relationship with an animal and without having a relationship with one of the employees that performed that particular activity. I say employees because employees are a subset of persons. So it makes sense in a master detail or main form subform to include animals and transactions or animals and activities. So I'm going to log into Apex as the developer, Carla Mora. I'm going to go into the application. This will be the development application. And I'm going to create a form on persons. So I want a form with report. I've named the report page and the form page, and I'll click Next. I will create a navigation item, and I'll put that under People. And then I select the table, which is the Persons table. And I'll accept the default, which is to show all the fields. If I want to exclude something, I will select it and hit the arrow to move it to the left side. By default, the form will manage this by using the primary key column, and I'll select that, which is Person's ID, and create. I'll save and run that. On the left-hand side, I see Report List of Persons, and I can select one of these and see the form. I want to modify the form. We've done this before, so I'll do this fairly quickly. I will modify the form, and I'm going to set it up so that first name, middle name, last name are on the same row. I select middle name on the left side and then scroll down on the right side and say Start New Row No. I select last name on the left side, scroll down and say Start New Row No. I'm going to do the same thing for zip so that it's on the same row as address. And then for date created and date modified, I'm going to simply modify the property here. Notice I did a control, held down the control key and did a multiple select. If they share the attribute, I can change them simultaneously. And instead of doing date picker, these are populated through PL/SQL code in a trigger. So all I want here is display only, which it's off the screen, but I'm selecting display only. So we'll see that, but we cannot modify that data. I will save this and run that. And this is the look. Right now it's blank. If I go back to my report, select a record, I can see data in that form. One other thing I'll do here is on zip, I will edit the page, and I will use for zip, I will use a pop list and come down to the list of values and show that it comes from shared components. And then I will select the zip list. I will save that and run the form again. Let me come back to the report so that I have data displayed in the form. And so now I see a pop list. In the form itself, we're seeing just the zip code. We'll change that display probably in another video. I've already done it in other video series where we could see the city, state, and zip all in this field. But what I like about the pop list is I could do a search if it's a longer list and reduce my options by typing in a search. I'll close this because I don't want to change this particular data item, but that's an example of the pop list. So that's our simple form. We have a simple form, a single page that interacts directly with a single table for adding and maintaining data. Now let's take a look at Masterdetail. I'll go back to my application and I want to create a page. I want Masterdetail, main form, subform. And this is new as of 18.2, and these options are great. I'm going to show the side-by-side and the drill down. These are very useful features in the newer versions of Apex. So let's do side-by-side, and I'll let Apex number the page, and the Masterdetail page is going to be people, employees. I'll click next. I will create a navigation item because I'm going to do this more than once to illustrate differences. So I'm going to do people, employees, and this will be side by side. How about that? And click Next. So what is the master table? Persons or people is the master to employees. Employees are a subset, if you will, of persons. And so I would select persons. In fact, the relationship between persons and employee would be a one-to-one relationship. A one-to-one relationship. If I come in here and look at the data model, right now it's showing one-to-many. I will show you how to modify this. I can modify how this relationship looks by editing the data model and making pers ID unique. You can only have one record with that particular pers ID. So let me come back. I'll do that hopefully in another video. I have done it in the previous 18.1 series. So I come back to my display. I've selected persons, and we select the primary display column. And I don't have the option to display pers ID. So I will go ahead and pick last name. Secondary display column, I'll pick first name. I do have a problem with this because I don't think name is a good way to filter sufficiently on a large database. My detail table is going to be the employees table. And I could do another detail table, but I'll do that in another video. Create, save, run. So I really like this. Over on the left-hand side, we have a search feature. Now, I would like to be able to search by an ID at some point, but right now, I can search, let's say, by last name. So I'll search on Sanchez, and I see that I have two people with the last name Sanchez. If I select Yolanda, then notice what happens to the right. I see persons and employee, but Yolanda is not an employee, so no data found. I can select Teresa, and I see persons, but I also see the related employees data. So Teresa is an employee, whereas Yolanda is not. What I don't like is if I wanted to search by an ID. So I paused the video, I opened up Object Browser and selected persons on the left side and did a query, and I'm querying on last name and seeing the same two records. Let's say that I know the person ID is this 90151 for Teresa, but if I come in here to the form and I search on that, I get no record found. But I think there'll be many times when I want to search based on an employee ID in one case, in this case, a person ID. So I want to do a quick edit to this. I'm going to select Master Records on the left-hand side and scroll down to the SQL query and edit that query. And here we're getting a search based on last name or first name, and I want to modify this code and include, and I'm just going to do a copy paste to cut down on typing, but now instead of searching last name or first name, I'm going to search pers ID. And this will be case sensitive because it's in the double quotes. So I'm going to click OK, save, run that, and now it's already got that in there. Let me replace that with something. No record found. Whoops, sorry, I did a copy paste. Let me get back there. I think it was 90151 for Teresa. So now I see Teresa if I do a search on her person or people ID. I want that search capability. So let's go back to our design, and I want to create another page. again will be Masterdetail, and I just want to illustrate this other option. So here's drill down. I've named the master page and the detail page. Click Next. I will create a navigation item, so this will be persons, employees, drill down, and I'll select people. My table is again persons. The primary key column is purse ID. Navigation order, let's do purse ID. Click Next. Then we're doing the detail. Notice that up here in this path showing progress toward completion. And here we have a selection where we want to select employees. Our list of tables has been trimmed down to only the tables related directly to persons. And the primary key column is Imp ID. The foreign key is purse ID to purse ID. And this is detected because we already have that relationship defined in the database. I will click on Create and save and run that. So with drill down, I can select something. Let's reduce our list back to Sanchez and select Teresa. And with Teresa, we see her person data above, followed by her employee data below. If I go back to the report, the drill down, and select Yolanda, we see the person data, and we see no data in the detail section because she is not an employee. So that's an example of the difference between how those two work. The one other thing I'm going to do is select the side-by-side. I would do it also for drill down if I were going to have both of those forms in my application. I will go back and edit the page. I've done this before. You've heard me talk about it. If I look at the columns and we have purse ID, it's hidden and I want to make it display. Then over on the left-hand side, I'll go down to employees. Look at the columns. You have employee ID. I want this to be display, and the same thing for purse ID. I want to see that. Save that, run that, so that I see this number, and I need to add the label for that. The same thing for these two. So oftentimes you want to have a master detail or main form subform in a web application page because the data in the two tables or even three tables really go hand in hand. It makes sense to see the data from both tables at the same time. I'll see you in the next video.